I still remember the sound of the zipper. It was early morning, the kind where the sky looks pale and undecided, like it hasn't made up its mind yet. I was standing in the bedroom doorway, half awake, watching my husband move around with quiet focus. He was packing my bag for me, something he rarely did. "You don't have to do that," I said, rubbing my eyes. "I can pack my own things." He smiled without looking up. "You're already running late. I've got it." There was nothing strange about his tone. Calm. Normal. Loving even. I didn't think twice about it. I trusted him. After all, this was my husband, the man I had built my life with. The bag wasn't big. Just a simple overnight bag. I was driving out of state to visit my sister. Nothing dramatic. One night away, maybe two. I kissed him goodbye, thanked him, and walked out the door with the bag slung over my shoulder. If this story touched your heart, let us know your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to our channel for more new stories. The drive was quiet. Long stretches of road, the radio low, my thoughts drifting between work stress and family memories. About 2 hours in, I stopped at a gas station just off the highway. One of those lonely ones with flickering lights and a convenience store that smelled like burnt coffee. I parked, stepped out, and stretched my legs. While the tank filled, I decided to reorganize my bag. I wanted to grab my charger and maybe switch shoes. I opened the zipper. At first, everything looked normal. Clothes folded the way I liked them. My toiletries bag. Then my hand touched something that didn't belong. It was heavy. Too heavy. I froze. Slowly, I moved the clothes aside. My heart started pounding before my brain could catch up. There, tucked beneath a sweater I didn't even remember owning, was a small metal object wrapped in a towel. My stomach dropped. I stared at it for a long second, hoping my eyes were wrong, hoping this was some kind of mistake. But the shape was unmistakable. Cold. Solid. Mechanical. I felt dizzy. People walked past me, laughing, talking, living normal lives, while my world narrowed to that open bag. My hands were shaking as I stepped back, almost like the bag might explode if I touched it again. Why was this in my bag? How was this in my bag? The only answer made my chest tighten. My husband had packed it. 100 thoughts crashed into my head at once. Maybe it wasn't what I thought it was. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe I was overreacting. But deep down, fear had already taken root. I zipped the bag shut, my fingers clumsy and weak. I didn't finish pumping gas. I didn't go into the store. I got back into my car and just sat there, breathing hard, my eyes fixed on the dashboard. I thought about calling my husband. My phone was already in my hand. But something stopped me. A quiet instinct I couldn't explain. If this was a mistake, the police would tell me. And if it wasn't, I didn't know who I was married to. The nearest police station was 15 minutes away. It felt like an hour. Every red light made me jump. Every siren in the distance made my heart race. The bag sat on the passenger seat like a silent accusation. I kept glancing at it, half expecting it to move. When I finally pulled into the station parking lot, my hands were numb. I grabbed the bag and walked inside, my legs unsteady. The room smelled like disinfectant and old paper. A desk officer looked up at me, his expression neutral. I need to talk to someone, I said. My voice didn't sound like my own. He nodded and gestured for me to come closer. "What's going on, ma'am?" I placed the bag on the counter, but didn't open it. "There's something in here," I said quietly. "I didn't pack it. I found it while traveling." He studied my face for a moment, then motioned for another officer. They led me into a small room and asked me to unzip the bag. My hands shook as I did. The moment the towel was pulled back, the air in the room changed. The officer's eyes widened. He took a step back without realizing it. His hand moved toward his radio. "Ma'am," he said slowly, his voice suddenly tight. "Where did you get this?" Tears burned my eyes. "I don't know. My husband packed my bag." The officer looked at me again, this time with something close to fear. "This is very dangerous, ma'am," he said. "You need to stay calm, and you need to tell us everything." In that moment, sitting in a small police room under harsh fluorescent lights, I realized something terrifying. Whatever was in my bag wasn't just an accident. And whatever my husband had done, it had already changed my life forever. I sat there in that small room, my hands folded so tightly in my lap that my fingers ached. The officers moved with controlled urgency, speaking in low voices just outside the door. I could hear radios crackling, footsteps echoing down the hallway, the muted hum of a building that suddenly felt very awake. One officer stayed with me. He offered me water, which I barely touched. My mouth was dry, but my stomach felt too tight to swallow anything. "Ma'am," he said gently, "I'm going to ask you a few questions. I need you to answer honestly."
Can you do that?
I nodded. "When was the last time you saw this object before today?" "I've never seen it before," I said immediately.
I swear. I didn't even know it existed.
He studied my face, not suspicious, but careful, like someone trying to decide how fragile a person is before saying the wrong thing. "You said your husband packed your bag?"
Yes.
"This morning, before I left." "What's your husband's name?" I said it. Hearing it out loud made my chest tighten. It sounded so normal, so harmless. "Does your husband own anything like this? Any weapons? Any equipment related to his job?" "No," I said, maybe too quickly. Then I hesitated. "At least not that I know of." The officer wrote something down. The scratching of his pen sounded too loud. Another officer came in, older, his face serious but calm. He introduced himself and sat across from me. "We're going to need to secure this item," he said. "And we're going to need to understand how it ended up in your possession." "I didn't put it there," I said, my voice breaking. "I would never." "We believe you," he interrupted, holding up a hand. "But right now, we need facts."
Facts.
I clung to that word. They asked about my marriage, how long we'd been together, whether we'd argued recently, whether I'd noticed anything unusual, late nights, secretive behavior, sudden changes. At first, I said no to everything. Then memories started creeping in, little things I had ignored.
A phone call he took outside last week.
The way he'd gone quiet when I asked about his work schedule. How he'd insisted on packing my bag, smiling like it was nothing. "I thought he was just being nice," I said softly. The older officer leaned back slightly. "Sometimes that's how these things start." Those words sent a chill through me. They told me I couldn't leave yet. Not until they finished their initial report. I sat alone again, staring at the blank wall. My reflection in the small window looked like someone else.
Pale.
Hollow. Older. I thought about calling my sister to tell her I'd be late. I thought about calling my husband. I didn't do either. An hour passed. Maybe two. Time felt thick and slow. Finally, the door opened again. The younger officer came back in, his expression changed. More alert now. More cautious. "Ma'am," he said, lowering his voice, We ran a preliminary check. This object is not something that should ever be transported by a civilian, especially across state lines. My heart started racing again. What does that mean? It means, he said carefully, that if you had been stopped on the highway with this in your bag, you could have been arrested on the spot. The room seemed to tilt. But I didn't know, I whispered. I didn't even open the bag until… I know, he said. And that's why you came here instead of continuing your trip. That matters. Is it illegal?
I asked. He paused.
In the wrong hands, yes. And in the wrong place, very much so. I pressed my hands to my face, trying to breathe. Images flashed through my mind. Police lights, handcuffs, a cell. My life ending because of something I didn't even pack. Was I in danger? I asked quietly. He didn't answer right away. Yes, he said finally. Potentially. That word echoed in my head. Potentially. They told me they were going to contact my husband. Not to accuse him yet, they said. Just to ask questions. My stomach dropped. Can I call him first? I asked. The older officer shook his head slowly. Not yet. We don't want to compromise anything. Compromise. Another heavy word. I sat there, replaying the morning over and over. His smile. His calm voice. The way he kissed my forehead like always. Had it all been an act? The officers stepped out again. This time, I could hear raised voices in the hallway. Phones ringing. One word floated back to me, barely audible. Intent. I hugged my arms around myself. When they returned, their faces were tight. Your husband is not answering his phone, the older officer said. A sharp fear cut through me. That's not normal. He always answers. Do you know where he is right now? At home, I said automatically. Then doubt crept in. At least, that's what he said. They exchanged a look. Ma'am, the younger officer said, we're going to have officers do a welfare check at your residence. My heart pounded. Why? To make sure everything is as it should be. And if it's not? I asked. He didn't answer that. They let me sit in the waiting area this time. Other people were there. Someone complaining about a parking ticket. Someone filling out a form for a lost phone. Normal problems. Normal lives. I felt completely disconnected from all of it. My phone buzzed suddenly in my hand. I jumped. A text message. From my husband. Did you get there safe? I stared at the screen. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped the phone. I didn't reply. Another message came in. Call me when you can. My chest felt like it was caving in. The officers noticed my reaction. I handed them the phone without a word. They read the messages, then asked me to unlock it. I hesitated, then did it. At that point, privacy felt meaningless. They asked if they could look through our recent calls and messages together. I nodded numbly. That's when they found it. A deleted message thread. I hadn't seen it before. Numbers I didn't recognize. Short, coded messages.
Dates. Times.
Locations. The older officer exhaled slowly. This is concerning. Who are they? I asked, my voice barely audible.
We don't know yet, he said.
But we're going to find out. Another officer entered the room and whispered something to him. His face darkened. They're at your house now, he told me. I felt dizzy. And your husband is not there. My heart sank. But, he continued, there's something else. He paused, choosing his words carefully. They found packing materials, similar to what was wrapped around the object in your bag. The room went silent. In that moment, the truth settled over me like a heavy blanket. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a mistake. My husband hadn't just packed my bag. He had used me. And wherever he was now, he was running. I didn't cry right away. Shock has a strange way of numbing everything. I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out all the air inside me and left only weight behind. The officers kept talking, but their words blurred together. Running. Evidence. Investigation. All of it sounded distant, unreal. "Ma'am," the older officer said gently, bringing me back. "We're going to need you to stay with us tonight." "Am I under arrest?" I asked quietly. "No," he said quickly. "You're not a suspect. You did the right thing by coming here." It didn't feel like the right thing. It felt like my life had split into a before and an after, and there was no bridge between them. They moved me to a small interview room again, this time with softer lighting. Someone brought me a blanket. Another officer offered food. I shook my head at both. All I could think about was my husband's face that morning. The ease in his movements. The normalcy. How carefully he had folded my clothes. That level of calm didn't come from panic. It came from planning. They asked me to go through our relationship in detail. When we met, how long we dated, any signs I might have missed. I answered everything as honestly as I could, even when it made me feel foolish. There were no red flags, I said. At least none that stood out. He was kind, consistent, predictable. "Sometimes that's intentional," the younger officer said. "The most dangerous people don't look dangerous at all." That sentence settled deep in my chest. Hours passed. The station grew quieter as the night went on. Outside, rain started tapping against the windows, slow and steady. I watched it slide down the glass and tried to ground myself in the moment. Then a phone rang. The officers stepped outside to answer it. I could hear low voices, urgency creeping back into their tone. When they returned, their expressions told me everything before they spoke. "They found your husband's car," the older officer said. My heart jumped. "Where?" "Abandoned. About 40 miles north of here." "Was he in it?"
No.
Of course he wasn't. They told me what they'd found inside. A burner phone. Maps.
Cash.
Items that didn't belong to the man I thought I knew. Items that suggested preparation. Escape. I felt sick. Why? I asked. Why would he do this? The officer hesitated. We're still piecing that together. But based on what we've seen so far, this wasn't impulsive. That hurt more than anything else, because it meant I hadn't married a man who made a mistake. I had married someone who had a plan. They let me make a phone call. I called my sister. When she answered, my voice finally broke. I told her everything. She didn't interrupt. She just listened, breathing on the other end of the line like an anchor. She offered to drive to me immediately. The officers agreed it was a good idea. After the call, I sat alone again. The room felt too small. Every sound made me jump. I kept expecting my husband to walk through the door, smiling, apologizing, explaining it all away. He didn't. Instead, the younger officer came back with a file. "We found something else," he said. He slid a photo across the table. It was a picture of me, taken from behind, at a grocery store, weeks ago. My stomach dropped. "I didn't know this existed," I whispered. "We found it on one of the devices recovered from your house," he said, "along with travel schedules." Your travel schedule. I felt exposed, violated. "He knew exactly when you'd be on the road," the officer continued. Exactly where you'd stop. The gas station. It hadn't been random. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to stay steady. Was I supposed to get caught? That's one possibility, he said carefully. Another is that you were meant to unknowingly transport it farther than you did. Either way, I was a tool. They explained that the object in my bag was tied to a larger investigation, that my husband may have been involved in something much bigger than I could imagine, that by stopping when I did, I may have prevented something serious. That didn't comfort me, because prevention came at a cost. My marriage, my safety, my sense of reality. Dawn started creeping in through the windows, turning the dark sky a pale gray. I hadn't slept. My body felt heavy, my mind exhausted. When my sister arrived, I broke down completely. She held me like I was fragile glass, and for the first time since this all began, I let myself cry. The officers gave me instructions. Numbers to call. People not to contact. They told me to stay with family for now. To change my routines. To be careful. Careful. A word I had never associated with my own life before. Before I left the station, the older officer stopped me. I know this is hard, he said, but you need to understand something. I looked at him. If you hadn't trusted your instincts at that gas station, he continued, you might not be standing here right now. That thought followed me out into the morning air. As my sister drove us away, I watched the police station disappear in the rearview mirror. My phone buzzed once more in my pocket. An unknown number. A single message. I never meant for you to be hurt. I stared at the screen, my blood turning cold, because I knew, without a doubt, who it was from. And I knew something else too. This story wasn't over yet. I didn't reply to the message. I couldn't. My hands were shaking too hard, and even if they weren't, I didn't know what I would say. There are moments when silence feels safer than any word you could choose, and this was one of them. My sister noticed my expression immediately. What is it? She asked, keeping her eyes on the road. Nothing. I lied, slipping the phone back into my pocket. I wasn't ready to say his name out loud again. Saying it felt like inviting him back into my head. We stayed at her place that night. She locked every door, checked every window, and insisted I take her bedroom while she slept on the couch. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the house. Every creak made my heart jump. Every shadow felt suspicious. Sleep didn't come easily. When it did, it was filled with broken images. A zipper closing. A gas pump clicking off. My husband's smile, frozen and unfamiliar. I woke up just before sunrise, my chest tight, my mind racing. Over the next few days, my life shrank. The police checked in regularly. They told me not to go anywhere alone, not to follow my usual routines, not to post anything online. I changed passwords I hadn't thought about in years. I stopped answering unknown calls. I jumped every time my phone buzzed. They told me my husband was officially a person of interest. That phrase hit harder than I expected. A person of interest. Not a suspect. Not a criminal. Just a man they were looking for. A man I had loved. They asked me to come in again to answer more questions. Each time, I learned a little more. Not enough to understand everything, but enough to realize how much I hadn't known. There were financial records I'd never seen. Trips he'd taken alone that he'd brushed off as work-related. Contacts saved under fake names. A second email account. A second life. What was he involved in? I asked one afternoon, my voice tired. The agent across from me sighed. We're still investigating, but it's serious. And it's bigger than you. That didn't reassure me. One evening, as I sat at my sister's kitchen table pretending to eat, my phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. I'm watching the news.
They're talking about you.
My breath caught. How did you get this number? I typed back before I could stop myself. The reply came almost instantly. You always forget how observant I am. Fear rushed through me, sharp and cold. Turn yourself in, I wrote.
Please.
This isn't going to end well.
There was a long pause this time.
So long I wondered if he was gone again. Then the phone buzzed. They don't know what I know, and neither do you. I stared at the screen, my pulse pounding in my ears. What does that mean? I typed. No response. That night, I showed the messages to the police. Their faces hardened. They told me I'd done the right thing, but their urgency scared me. He's testing boundaries, one of them said, seeing how close he can get. Am I in danger? I asked. They didn't answer immediately. Yes, the agent said finally. But we're doing everything we can to keep you safe. I started staying inside almost all the time. The world outside felt hostile, unpredictable. Friends called, confused, worried. I didn't know what to tell them. How do you explain that the person you trusted most had turned your life into evidence? One afternoon, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. I froze. My sister looked at me, alarmed. She moved quietly to the window and peeked outside. It's the police, she whispered. Relief flooded me so fast my knees felt weak. They came in and sat with us. Their expressions were serious, but there was something else there too. A hint of resolution. We believe we're close, one of them said. But there's something we need from you. I swallowed. What? We think he might try to contact you one last time. Not to threaten, to explain. I don't want to hear it, I said immediately. I understand, the agent said. But if he does, it could help us find him. The idea made my skin crawl. The thought of hearing his voice again, calm and familiar, made my stomach twist. I'll think about it, I said. That night, I sat alone in the guest room, my phone on the bed beside me like a loaded weapon.
I didn't want it to ring.
I also couldn't stop watching it. Just after midnight, it buzzed. This time, it was a call. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. Unknown number. I thought about everything he had done, everything he had put me through. I thought about the woman I had been before the gas station. Trusting, unafraid. I answered. Hello. My voice barely worked. There was a breath on the other end. Then his voice. I'm sorry, he said. The sound of it hit me harder than any message.
Familiar.
Controlled. Almost gentle. Why? I asked, tears spilling down my face. Why me? I needed someone I trusted, he said quietly. Someone no one would suspect. The words cut deep. You destroyed my life, I said. I never wanted to hurt you, he replied. I just needed time. For what? I demanded. To finish what I started. My chest tightened. You used me. Silence. Yes, he said finally. That was all I needed to hear. As he kept talking, I listened, not as his wife, but as a witness. I let him explain, justify, rationalize. I let him reveal pieces of himself I had never seen. And all the while, the call was being traced. When the line finally went dead, I sat there shaking, my face wet with tears, my heart broken in a way that felt permanent. The police arrived minutes later. 2 days after that, they found him. He didn't resist arrest. I wasn't there when it happened. I didn't see his face, didn't hear his voice. I only heard the confirmation from an officer over the phone. "He's in custody," they said. "You're safe now." Safe. The word felt strange. In the weeks that followed, life slowly began to stretch back out again. Not to what it was before. That version of my life was gone, but into something new, quieter, more careful, more honest. I went to therapy. I leaned on my sister. I learned to trust my instincts instead of dismissing them. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about the bag, the weight of it, the moment everything changed. But I also think about the choice I made at that gas station. To stop, to look, to ask for help. That choice saved me. My husband packed my bag, but I unpacked the truth. And in doing so, I took my life back.